All right, we're back over here on site. We've been off site for a while working on refining the kitchen design, but meanwhile, Tim has framed out or furred out this area to be sort of coplanar with that beam. And we did choose to just catch the top edge of the drywall across the top horizontally instead of putting, painstakingly putting on all those little sticks. I don't think that's going to be necessary for right now. They got their their pantry closet cleaned out, which he had said that all the millwork had been painted. So you can see here that not only did they trim this inside, but it would have been golden oak trims everywhere, and someone just didn't feel like coming in here to do that. The baseboard is all still golden oak, etc. So that's what was in here first, and I think they bought it when it had already been painted. So once you do that, that's that. Otherwise, I would say if we're going to do wood trims, I think I'd like them to do wood trims on these windows, and somewhere here transitioning, it'd be nice to trim this door with wood natural finish. Just got the 3 windows over there. Even though the grids and the windows themselves are white, it might be worth doing that. And same over here, the interior is white, and so is this door. But I think it's perfectly forgivable to move over to all wood trim, in which case if it hadn't been painted white, obviously it would have been golden oak, but it could have been, it's really the finish, because frankly their color is almost exactly this golden oak. It's obviously not oak in this case, it's pine, but it's a satin finish. And so you could either sand down or apply, clean and apply a clear that's got a satin finish to the woodwork and keep going. So, what are you going to do? Not a big deal, but we're down to this being opened up and ready to kind of move the project this way eventually, fairly soon. But today I'm getting started with plumbing. So we're going to need our kitchen drains, and we're going to need our pot filler water supply over here by the stove somewhere. And then they've got water supply to the refrigerator. So right to start with, I'm going to go to 16 inches off the surface of the subfloor, which will be where all the top of the lower baseboard outlets are. And so this is a layout stud. I know that our kitchen cabinet layout has the refrigerator coming over somewhere next to this trim here pretty closely. And so it's a 36-inch refrigerator. And so I was able to measure that over here. And so we know that that's where basically the counter and the cabinet start. And so somewhere in here, without taking more drywall and opening it up just for our purposes here, somewhere in here is where we want the water. And so then I figured out which one of these 2 studs is a layout stud, which is the leftmost one, so I left him alone. This one is the drywall return for turning the corner to where this wall used to be. So he's just an extra. He's extra. So that makes more sense to cut him off just from a best practices perspective. The box is built, to be anchored into the face of the framing. And then this escutcheon is separate, and it comes in at about 1/2 inch off for the drywall. So I cut that off. I send the top of this to the 16, which would be the top of that. Escutcheon is, quite a bit bigger, but that's, how that plays out. I'm not going to the top of that at 16. I'm going to here at 16. And so we go right in here, actually prior to this block. So I get this cut out of here, and I'm able to anchor on the left-hand side. But out of, curiosity, it looked like about 1.5 inches. So indeed, they put a block over here. I'll stick him on. Our spigot will go down, because that's where our water supply is coming from, the basement. And after I apply him there, we can just anchor to left, anchor to right, and leave it there for now. We know where we're going to go there with water. And same goes for over here. I already made a dumb error. I went to 18 from the subfloor, which is right about where you want to enter the wall with a given sink, kitchen or bathroom sink. And after I marked it, I drilled the hole through before I thought, well, actually, you're going to do a vent. The point of the hole going through there is to provide that orifice into the wall on the one side in the form of the sanitary tee. But then we're going to go up and over and back down to tie a vent pressure in, so that when you send material from the sink down, it can pull atmosphere from the vent stack through the roof of this house behind it, and it can, peacefully go about its business. So because I do the loops in a lot of cases, you could go straight up here, but you got a window, so you can go around and then put a vent. You got the header here, so you're over there, but you're right at the eaves. It's ugly, you see it, and the snow and ice can break it down. There's no reason to poke another hole in the roof if we can help it. So we'll literally plumb in our atmospheric pressure from the main stack in the house, and you can go however far you need to get that done. So I like doing that, as well as for the reason that, as you saw, it ends up hanging physically, the location of this nice and easy through a stud, especially if you're nearby a stud. So actually the center line of the window is right here. And so a perfect center line of the faucet is right along the right-hand side. We don't have to be that perfect, just somewhere close within 6 to 8 inches left or right. So I like to keep it as, aligned as possible from a best practice standpoint. There's no reason to go way over there, open underneath the sink and see the P-trap cranked to one side, major one side or the other of the sink base. It's nice if it's roughly in the center. It also, because it sticks down some, it keeps you with usable space to the back of the cupboard on the right and the left-hand side. If you start cutting across and frigging all around, it starts tying up, your space underneath the sink. Things get bumped, and then you end up with leaks, and then your sink base rots and whatever else. So that's where I, come to with that. I just needed to drill through here a few more inches up, wherever it puts the center line of the orifice on that pencil elevation, that 18-inch elevation. So we'll do that, and we'll put this through, and then we'll plot out the center lines here based on this distance. We'll drill, and we'll have, we can go down into the basement space today with that and have that sort of finished here. Then we can come back and put our water supply in with our copper stub outs, which is how you do that. So there's a bunch of different systems where you put a strip across the face of the framing of copper or metal or plastic right here. And then they have some stub outs that like clip really nicely into that. The thing is, the way that those work, it curls the pecs around, and it puts it right at the back of a 2x4 wall bay. And on an interior wall, it's no problem. But when we're on an exterior wall like this, I don't want to go right over there because it's only half of an inch before you're basically touching frigid, well below zero temps in this climate zone 5. I want to be on the center line of the stud if I can be. So I buy these stub outs that come with this flange. This is Home Depot's got these. Lowe's around here doesn't carry them. They carry them without this flange. And that's another can of worms to try and anchor the thing. Another piece of hardware. So I like these from Home Depot because the flange comes up and it puts us practically on the center line of the stud. It could be a bit further out. However, I am going to install 1-inch styrofoam behind these two, as well as insulate them. But for its thickness, the polystyrene has a better R value. And so between being well off the face of the backside of the sheathing and putting the polystyrene behind there, we have, really no worries about frozen water lines in the wintertime. And that's why I end up doing that. And the last question I had was, because I had never put in a pot filler before, do you use a stub out? It'll be cold water that we come over here and do. But is it a stub out like this that you cut off? Or, it isn't, though. I went over to the plumbing supply, and they actually want that roughed in. The plumbing rough-in is done with a threaded nipple, or in the way that you would do a shower head. So this is threaded, and the threaded nipple will either it'll come with the shower head, or the pot filler, or the shower head itself. The neck of a shower head is threaded. The beautiful metal finish, whatever your color, it's got threads, and it spins into the wall. That's how the shower head works. So the pot filler must be something like that. I'm not sure. But we're going to be using PEX here otherwise. And so you get what's called a drop ear, which are these little ears that come off, and it's 1/2-inch NPT. And he'll be in the wall somewhere here, well, a couple of inches higher than the top edge of their biggest pot, which is going to end up being probably 18 to 20 inches off the top of the oven itself. So 36, 46, 56, around 52 to 56 inches off the floor with this center line. And they don't really want it centered on the oven, even though I might be interested in doing that. We'll probably go left, though, because we've got more counter on the left and the coffee and stuff like that, the K-cups and the Keurig and all of that. And the beautiful thing about that is if you bring the pot filler over, you can just fill the Keurig where it is, or the coffee pot where it is, instead of taking it over to the sink and coming back. And I've even asked them to consider another garbage over here next to the oven. So not only do the eggshells and stuff coming right off where you cracked them into the pan making breakfast don't have to drip across the floor over here and go right into the garbage, but also all the K-cups, the tea bags, the coffee grounds, the filters, whatever else, right into the trash, water right in here. So the whole coffee thing stays over here. So if anything, we'll probably go left with this thing. But of course, we got this beam here. So we've got to think about how we're going to put that in there. And that'll be another thing that goes in on the center line of the wall as well. So let's see if we can get those few things in here today. Okay, viewers, welcome back to this kitchen relocation. We have got 2 holes coming down from upstairs in the wall behind the kitchen sink. We've got fluids draining on the right-hand side and atmospheric pressure coming, in fact, it's coming this way, in a loop up and over and down to follow the fluids. And so we're bringing that, connection in on the left-hand side here. So on the right-hand side, we're going to start high. We're going to try to use big sweep elbows to keep from slowing the flow down. We're going to sort of turn as kind of soon as we can at the top. And we're going to go downhill in the floor system with the joists as much as we can here. Because drilling holes through these joists, we've got to stay in the middle third of their overall height. And trying to start a stick, now it's 1.5 inches, it can be done. 1.25 inches is easier, but it's unlikely a lot of times that you're routing that. Into existing 16-inch on center construction, it's hard to start a stick and get it through 2 or 3 holes, and then you've got to beat it, and just slide it up and try to floss it or, stitch it into the holes in the joists. It's possible, but we can avoid that in this situation because we're headed over there. And so all this direction we can get without breaking the plane of the flooring framing, so much the better. So we're going to stay for almost 10 feet in the floor system by just going downhill with the joists. Then we can go with the beam, because the beam breaks the plane of the ceiling, and you're always going to have to finish around it if you should finish this space. It'll have to be in a wall or otherwise sort of, soften it around or what have you. So if you can stick to the side of it, then you can just expand that finished box in the future to sort of cover it up, which is a nice way to have our cake and eat it too here. It's not the best, but it's totally possible and it's cost effective. So once we head down here, we're going to turn and fall down into just the bottom surface of the joist. I'm as high as I can be with this route, and then we're going to go down 1/4 inch a foot. So I was able to set it tight to the joist over here. After about 4 feet, we're about 1 inch lower. Now that's sitting down because I haven't got another hanger on it, but we're heading that way and we're tight to the beam in this way. How we're going to get from that location roughly down and over into there, I'm going to use a long radius elbow on the end of that route right there, here, okay? And we're going to put him at a 45-degree angle so that it's a nice big turn and it's already headed downhill at 45, and then we're going to go into a Y into this route, and the other leg of the Y out the back will have a plug in it that you could take out and you can clean out or otherwise snake this line. Now this is a similar fitting. This is actually a combo. It's got a Y, to here it's got a Y, and then it's got a 45 that gets you to 90 degrees to the axis here, where a Y is coming off at 45 degrees to this axis. So this is something that I thought I might do, but the thing is, once you put this elbow on perfectly vertically, it's a lot taller. So if I'm starting with that horizontal leg up tight to the joist, it takes the other end of this so high that I can start shortening it down to a regular elbow to try and keep this going downhill. But I'd just as soon turn this at 45 and come into this fitting, because then we get to lose that whole upper half, right? Sorry, I don't have enough hands here. But we get to lose this whole component and start there, and then we lose that much in total height. And I can still go to both a street long radius elbow or a street regular elbow to continue. So the street will go right into the hub of the Y clean out, and we continue to shorten the distance basically from that to there, so that we can come downhill really well and turn around and relieve the flow and make it as smooth as possible in this direction, give ourselves a clean out to do any snaking. And these days you don't want to have to do a lot of snaking. You want to use the correct sizes. You want to relieve the slowing of the flow by using the biggest turns possible, and you want to be efficient with your routing, and then you really shouldn't have to snake anything. But if you do, it'll be there, and it's no problem to glue that in instead of just a regular elbow. And so we'll be down this way. And so this is the kitchen island drains now. I think this is the fluid drain, and that's like vent, and that goes over to catch the atmospheric pressure from the stack in the house somewhere else. So all this is going away. So the fluids are going to continue down and continue downhill next to the beam, and right here we'll just turn, and we'll jump into this, what's left of it. We'll cut him off, we'll turn here, and we'll go right into there. Now if that needs to get a little bit lower, we can cut it down in there so it's a little bit lower. In fact, we could actually keep on going, clear the things out the top of this shelf, and maybe we'll do that over in there on top and just catch that and get rid of all of this crap here. As well as this leg for venting, we'll cut that all off. Now this vent is running downhill It's coming from up inside the floor system to down below the plane of the floor. So when we cut him off, he can go back up in there. And then the vent for us, that comes down on the left-hand side over here, he'll come over, he'll come down, he'll run right along underneath this route. And as soon as he can, turn, and we'll tie in to this vent leg. It's too bad that he has to be underneath this route, and that can be up in the floor system. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. I can, at this point, change... You know, that might be worth doing, because if I made fluids on the left, if I rearranged that in the wall upstairs, it would mean that the left-hand side could run below the vent, and it could proceed downhill and just keep going downhill with no collateral damage effects. And then the right-hand side, that could come out, turn, and stay right against the bottom of the framing tight, because it doesn't need to go downhill. And then right here, it could turn over, it can go up at 45 degrees, or excuse me, it could go vertical with an elbow right up into the floor system, turn, and come right along and keep this in about the center line of the floor system. So that's going to be a product of whether or not you've got fluids on the right or the left, venting on the right or the left. And so if we go upstairs and see, I haven't glued anything, and this is for this reason. And I honestly just came across that decision as we were speaking right here, but it'll show you what kind of thinking about your plans can do for you before you just act in a big hurry and make a problem for yourself. So because all this is dry fit, I can move this over there and make this the vent route and this the fluid drain. Everything else stays the same. All this stuff is just, again, it's dry fit, and that'll make our life a heck of a lot easier downstairs. So let's do that. Okay, so my flow is on the left, so we'll do a big sweep elbow high at the top so that we can go downhill all the way here. And so that is the case because we have to have a certain amount of distance between the center line of this clean out combination Y-TY fitting, or Y, it's a combo fitting anyway. But we want him to be tight to the joist. Now I am going to cut this back so that this is over here next to the beam. However, you can see that to join the flow at 45 degrees like you need to do, and then to turn and continue to be to 90 from the axis here at 90 degrees with this face. And then to have a street elbow saves you a piece of pipe and a hub on the other end of the elbow, so you can shorten it like that. But that's 90 degrees up to there, and that's still quite a distance from this center line. You can see it'd be really high up toward the subfloor there. So if I clock this thing over and go with a street 45, that's about as short as it gets. Sorry, everything's twisted here a little bit, but we're going to be there. If I go with a street 45, which goes right into the hub here, it shortens the center line of this route to the center line of this, the distance, the offset between them as much as possible. And then when you go up there tight, I'm still in the bottom third of the joist with the connection. Means I'm going uphill still to where I turn down through the floor, and that's a really nice fluid route with a nice gentle turn to head this direction, and it keeps us on this far side here, and it keeps us up at the top. And then, and in fact, we're not actually going to be up to the joist. We're going to come down and run below the vent route, because the vent route can stay tight to the joists all the way along, and the fluid route can start tight to it, and then it'll go down a little bit, down to the far end wall and turn and go into the flow and go out to the septic system, to the street. Actually goes forward to the left. And then the vent, it can turn at some point here and connect up to the old vent. So we're going to have help in the fact that we're going with a street 45 and tipping the combo fitting over. And we're going to have help in the fact that we don't need to be here. We can be one diameter down. And so altogether, it's going to be a really nice, we're going to be right about there and there. In fact, we can't actually get left enough at this point. Sorry, we can't get left once we're down. All the higher up that we can go, the more snug we can go over to the left. So as we come down, it actually moves us over. So that's going to be another problem that we run into here. That's where all of a sudden, it is kind of a help to be vertical, because it keeps us, from moving off the face of this beam, making the finished beam any wider. Now, that's the goal here. If one of these routes can be below the other, where they haven't got to go side by side, then our finished theoretical beam someday doesn't have to be that much wider and that much more offset from the posts themselves. So I think that's worth figuring. And so right now I was thinking I was so smart using that 45-degree angle in a 45 street, but I might go back to vertical here to drop down a diameter and then use a street 90, which will still be low enough now because we've moved down, to go uphill in that direction, which means that the flow direction will be going downhill. So that's what we'll end up doing. This combo and a street 90 will be what we end up putting in place here. All right, I amended my thinking again. I went just to a regular Y to a street 90. And so now, since our flow is on the left-hand side, we need to get under and stay under the venting, which is on the right-hand side, which is going to take this route in this inside corner between beam and joist all the way down. That hook's going to go up because this can remain level the whole way until it peels off and goes right to tie into the old vent from the old system. Meanwhile, our fluids on the left-hand side, as we look at it here, are going to dive below that and run right along underneath them with the axes aligned in that way. So in going with this route here, I can kind of pull this down to the lowest extent. It is hung up on that bridging a little bit, but the idea is that it's almost exactly the diameter that I need here. Now all I need to do is shorten this by whatever amount brings us over to here, and we'll have our fluids diving underneath and running along, going downhill on our way to the far wall, and our venting running along on the inside corner. Nothing any wider than one diameter of this size pipe, and therefore it exists, well within the box out of this here. We could put it on the other side of this beam, but I don't think we're going to be low enough when we get over there to the end of the steel to justify, being on the other side, being able to go right and go right underneath it. We'd have to dive at an unnecessarily sharp angle, and then we'd be going underneath the thing and running around against the wall there. I don't think that that's going to make any sense as compared to doing it just on this side. So that's what we're going to end up doing here. And so now that we've got some things ironed out, I can bring that J hook up. I got a bunch more J hooks. I can cut this back this amount, get it tied into another route, get some other J hooks coming down the gap where this one sticks down underneath this route. We can hang some lower and catch this fluid route below. So I think when we get a few more things finished here, it'll be a little bit more self-explanatory maybe. I can see it in my mind right now, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. And I don't know that there's much time lapse to be seen here, so we're just going to keep shooting this as I make some progress. Okay, so I used the laser real quick to lay out where the PEX route should go, and looked at, down here where we're going to turn. Didn't make that much of a difference, but I did check. I think we're going to, just roll right into the cold copper here, one way or another. And the hot right here, I'll probably take that vertical out that goes to this kitchen sink that's currently there, and we'll just sweat our new valve on here and just tie into right there. Then it'll be our hot and our cold lines. They turn the corner here. Somewhere practically, I'm trying to think, it might be over there. We got to get to the water for the refrigerator. So we'll cut a T, we'll just snip it, put a T in, go over and up to the water for the fridge. And then down here where we turned and went down the side of the joist and then up, I kept that a nice big bend, heading right away from the rim joist as soon as possible and as kind of abruptly as possible. And we'll probably use some expanding foam around there too to gain our value between there and the rim. But then right here, we're also going to cut in a T where the cold heads that way. We'll cut it, and this will go over to the kitchen sink. The right hand will head that way, and then this way we'll go over to the pot filler. And so these hooks are also laid out on the same sort of line that the rest of the blue pipe is laid out on. I have a few more hold downs to use so it pulls it straight. And then we go over. It's a little bit cranked around right now, but we'll get a hold down there. We go over and we go up right there. Luckily, the center line, I couldn't believe it, the center line of the wall right to the one side of that bay that the pot filler is in. Sorry, I'm like fully blocked getting over there, but anyway, the rim joists overlap, or there's a second layer right there. And all right, well, I laid out with the laser and put the water lines up on the ceiling, and just, kept everything loose, didn't commit and nail anything in too far. The one cold goes the line goes all the way down there and up to the pot filler. So we'll cut a T in right here to head in that direction, and as well as going around the corner here. And we'll connect the blue to the cold there and the red to the insulated hot there. That'll be the cold and hot that goes to the current kitchen sink that can get taken down. This is a vent, so it can go up into the floor system and roll down and join our upper run here, which is our vent there. So we have enough pipe routed there for now. The rest of this will disappear, and where the water drains over to there, we'll just keep heading downhill with our lower run here, turn the corner and tie into that and go right on down. And the rest of this will be removed, and all these problem areas that they've had trouble with will be gone. And that'll be that. And then we got to go over there and get the fridge water. So that'll be a T that we cut in right here somewhere too, and run over and get the fridge water. And then without locking anything down, everything will be roughed in place, and we'll go back to finishing up the drain roughing, dry fitting. And then when we're sure everything is happy, joy, we can make a decision on what order to glue, prime and glue the drains, finish nailing in the hold downs for the water, crimp the rings on the T's and all of that, crimp the rings on the connections up there in the wall. And then, as soon as we're ready with the kitchen cupboards and they're placed and we can put the sink on top, and maybe if they pick a faucet, we could actually set the sink base, the sink, no counter, but put a piece of plywood up with a hole in it to mount the faucet up onto for the time being, and connect up the P-trap and the supply lines to the shutoff valve and all of that, and get the kitchen sink running over in the new kitchen area. And then with that, with some more plywood on top of the cupboards, we can tear this all down and start demoing out their existing kitchen, and they'll have to sort of live between the two spaces then until we're, got them fully migrated into the new scenario. But it's that kitchen sink that's a real hindrance to, you don't want to be down without the kitchen sink. They have other sinks and stuff, but I don't want to have to do that. So we're going to shoot for it to be that way. But I'm feeling good. They've got another day tomorrow. We got over an hour today and another full day tomorrow. So we ought to be able to sort of call the plumbing practically done. Plumbing roughing practically done by the end of this week, but let's keep moving. Well, here's another great use for the plane laser. Now it is flashing because it wants you to know that it's out of level, which is pretty obvious over there. But in this way, I've set it to approximately the visual center line of that lower run that's supposed to be going downhill. And so between the far end on the left and this second hanger, I'm on the center line. And as you can see, the weight of it unsupported is curving down, not to mention that, coupler in the middle, what have you. So now, though, I can leave it and I can go over there on a ladder with some J-hooks, and I can get under it I'm going to go, what did I do? Skip to layout stud, basically 1, 2, then right there, then another 2, and then the last one, and then right at the end, the last joist will have a hanger on it, basically, to control the elevation. But I'll be able to go up and down and tack it based on that laser showing up on what looks like, approximately the middle of that whole run. And that'll make that, quite easy, and we'll get that slapped up. Okay, so I need to cut one more vent elbow into that upper run. Basically, what looks like right in that gap will be where we want to be, because this kind of tips over there. So being lined up to that gap, we'll cut in on that upper run. A vent elbow will go right up in there. And then we got to have one more vent elbow, which we haven't got to turn this way. And then we can come over and use a coupling and some other hangers and stuff to support that. So we need another vent elbow. As well as down here, we've moved, let's see if we can see it from over here. Just as a, matter of trying to keep this run as tight to that steel as possible. When we go down there, we end up being torqued off onto the insulation. So rather than cutting into the insulation, I think we need what's called a dog leg. We'll dog leg that. So we'll come down here, and somewhere here we'll jog over, and we can do that with 245s. We can go one way and then the other, although I don't have, that's another thing that I need. I got a 22 and a 45, which doesn't, you need the same, angle to cancel out. So we'll do that. We will use a street and a regular to shorten the whole situation, but we'll go see how that doesn't straighten back out again. But we'll jog with two, probably 45s, and it'll just boop, and that'll keep us on the insulation but tight to the steel. And then we'll turn the corner with a large radius elbow at a downhill angle, and then we'll likely use a 45 to just tip into that leg back in there, and that'll be our drain, and we'll be, good to go. And so we can get as far as being ready to do that, and we can get this vent pointed over here and ready to connect there. I've got those sweat to PEX crimp valves coming in special order because nobody carries them locally. And we can crimp these T's. We can go upstairs and commit to the, let's go look at that stuff. We can commit to the way that the PEX comes up. And, we could use, another pack of hold downs, claws. Whoa, watch out, they're getting late in the day. So over here, our beam goes right underneath. That was what we needed here. Hang on, I gotta turn this down or I won't be able to turn monetization on and make that sweet money. A couple cents a year, really. The beam ends up right here to support this post. And so over here, it ends up right underneath, solid wood, underneath the refrigerator water. So I just, PEX will only do so much of a bend. So I'm going to do like that, stick it on there. Then we go down and we zoop down in there. So I'll get that just so. I'll make sure this is what we want, and I'll get that ends crimped onto there. This, I just stuck it on here, but we'll shorten it and stick it to the wall on this side real nice. Put it on there and crimp it. And I'll probably hold off with the fire foam until I have any electrical penetrations also that we need to drill. Do all the electricity. We'll throw some boxes on the wall based on the model. So I'll get into the CAD model, which we need to do anyway for some other things, but I'll make the most sense of exactly where we should have outlets and slap those boxes on, and then remind myself of what we got for existing circuitry. See if we can't go into, the most logical thing would be the refrigerator, to turn up with that and put the refrigerator on that circuit. However, that's 14 gauge wire. Might be nice to have 20 gauge wire. So I'll have to start figuring out whether or not we could do something with that. Maybe that'll go up into the ceiling. We got to find out with these lights and that fan. We got to find out whether or not we're going to come off of this surface with some gooseneck lamps. In which case, I was thinking about that the other day. We may have been better off packing this out a full 2x4 and then using rips on this face to get out to planar with the 2x4 and come down the surface. So deal with it being bigger overall, so that you could put shallow fixture boxes on the face of this beam, and have lamps that come off of it and shine down. However, it's not the end of the world. We've got these up here, and I actually quite like those. I'm going to take them down, give them a faux finish, and maybe try to find a couple more and turn like that down there into one, perhaps, and point them at the counter, and not sure, point one at the island. It'd be neat to just go without fans. Not sure. I'd like to see. Fans also look nice hanging down. So we'll have to just start thinking about lighting and stuff too. But for right now, the water lines, the rough-in plumbing is all but put together. It's the end of the day. I'm not going to start gluing and crimping things and discover that I wish I had or I wish I hadn't. And again, hopefully it's clear here. We swapped which side is the vent, which side is the drain. Things that you want to leave flexible and just dry fit everything if you can. I also learned a lot about what can and can't be put together in pieces, so that we're not trying to glue ourselves into a corner where I can't manipulate two things apart and then back together with glue in a reliable way, and then you end up having to remake stuff because it's been glued up in a way that's out of order. So in dry fitting, you can start to understand the situation more, especially if you're really unfamiliar, you don't do it all the time. And once we're done with all of the hole drilling, we'll use some fire foam, which I did get, even though it only comes with these stupid reusable straws, but the orange foam. In fact, I'd rather the DAP. I'm really getting into the DAP foams over the Great Stuff brand, which was the OG. I don't know, their patent must be up. So that's where we are today. Let's come back and keep plugging away on rough-in plumbing tomorrow. Grabbed a regular 45 with hubs on both ends with a street 45. Makes a nice little dog leg, and you can keep the body lines that are right in it lined up to know that you're, on a straight plane, close enough by eye. Plumbing is fairly forgiving, and all your numbers are round and all of that. And that'll allow us to stay left on the beam to the point where we would dogleg around this insulation. So and this edge of the hub on the outside is where the pipe seats to on the inside, and it's normally a nice round number. So 1/2 inch and a half, and it's also about half the diameter, so 1/2 inch and a half. Nominal plumbing component is 3/4 inch of engagement, and you can get that measurement right here on the outside. It makes things real simple. So if we want to be roughly there, that's almost in line with the face of this hanger, so I can just scribe a line there, cut him off, and then what's left will actually be too long. Not to mention I got to do a corner with an elbow, so I'll go over and cut him down before I put him back up with an elbow on. So we'll get the dog leg and the elbow going around the corner, and I'm sure that that's going to be right where I want it, because I went up here and I'm looking to see that the gap is pretty uniform at both ends. It does neck in a little bit in the middle because I think it's sliding down that piece of bridging, but I did need to shove it with a clamp turned around to push to make sure that I've, gone to the extent that I wanted to down here. I guess there's no harm in doing the dog leg early, but I would just as soon put it sort of, where it stays almost inside the wall here, although I don't know how thick this stuff is. It's actually fairly thick. But my goal here would be someday if somebody wanted to frame and insulate an outside wall on this insulation or on this foundation, they could easily keep these routes in that framed wall, and then it would be in the box out of the beam. And again, there could be a finished basement situation in the future without too much modification. And like I think I already said, but you could just drill all the joists at that time and just pull the PEX and reroute it and reconnect it and put it up into the floor system. We're just not doing that now because it's more mess making, it's more time spent, and doing this tidy job here suits Tim and his wife, so that'll be good way to compromise here on costs. So we'll get those features in, and then I've got these hangers, and we'll use those to hold these runs that are in the joists. Over here, they're hung on those J-hooks, but here I didn't want to dogleg over just to be tight to the joist and then dogleg back. They're off by a couple of inches, but what we'll do is we'll hold them with this type of a hanger, and then it's twisted, or it should have been twisted at 90, but I guess it's at 45, so we got to continue the twist or do a bend. But in any case, we're going to bend this and go over to the side of the joist. In fact, I think if we bend it when that's twisted at 45, it'll go down at an angle which will allow me to screw it in rather than trying to screw it in where the pipe itself is in the way. So we'll get these bent after we figure out the dimension that they need to be bent at, and we'll use probably 2 each for a total of 4 just to control those. They're normally fine in a lot of cases, especially being up on the bridging, but it's just going to be more professional to hold them down in a couple spots and more likely to pass the first and only plumbing inspection. I don't want to have to come back and use a clamp now or whatever that they've seen it. I want them just seeing it, be happy. So a few bucks and half an hour, and we'll have this supported and those features down there, and then we'll see where we All right, my beautiful babies, that's our pot filler secured with some hold downs along the center line of the bay in the wall. We're gonna get some styrofoam, like I say, some 1 inch, and then once that's in place, we'll fill all of the openings, that are left with fire block foam, which will also harden up and lock everything into position. We've got that doubled back and going downstairs and stuff, but Those are easy, big curves. Every time you cut in an elbow, you know, it may look nice if you come back and cut in all these elbows and do all these 90s and make everything nice and sharp and straight. And I've done that sometimes if it made sense. But then at that point, I mean, it's a little bit more time spent cutting and sweating copper, of course, but you're on your way there, and you're, you know, meaning that you're leaving the time savings of using the PEX on the table in some ways. But it's also, every time you do that, you introduce another opportunity for failure or another variable. And I'm costing the fittings, all the elbows and stuff. So in the case of these big whoop-de-doos here, I want to get away from the rim joist and the cold outside air as quickly as possible. And so that's another place where we'll sneak a little piece of styrofoam in there, and then we'll use expanding foam. But their basement is a comfortable temperature all the time. And if anything, the warmer part of it is toward the upper half of the room as heat rises, and therefore there really shouldn't have any problems here. If you have a house like this and your basement's going to become frozen, the whole house is frozen at that point, and none of the water infrastructure should ever, you know, be risked with the whole house being at freezing temperatures or below. So there's still some due diligence to do here when we go out of town, or, you know, if it's going to be bitter cold outside and you're not going to use the facility for whatever reason for a few days. But all in all, that's a best case scenario, quick and dirty in one way, but also as professional as possible. These whoopity-doos in this run here, that looks probably the worst aspect of this right now is that it's dry fit. So what, for example, I'll get into next week, and so we probably won't make this the end of the plumbing video because I've got this much glue up to do, and there's a few more sort of tips. I'm going to take this straight length. I'll probably leave the elbow in the Y, and the Y on that piece, and the it's not a union, it's a coupling, and the next piece, and that whole dog leg and all that, that'll all be glued up on a flat floor somewhere, either down here. Well, yeah, it'd have to be down here because I can't get back up and down the stairs with it. But maybe we'll lie it on the ground through here and move that there, and just use the ostensibly flat floor plane to glue that up, as well as being able to shove all the components together and make one homogeneous piece. We'll leave the elbow to be dialed in to get the exact angle on the far end of it, but even this elbow can roll in that direction, and that's all something that's known. It's at 90 degrees to this. And then we'll glue the vertical, we'll put the verticals that go upstairs through the floor and put the elbows on, and so those are glued up. And then it'll be a situation where someone can manage that end and someone can manage this end, and we'll get these two long runs glued between the elbow and the feature here, get those ends on there tightly and everything. And then everything else here can kind of be glued and pushed in, glued and push that on. This is a little bit tricky. We'll probably make that little switchback piece, the short piece with the 90-degree ends, one at 90 degrees to the other, build that on the floor and put that in place all together as one thing, and just try to be wise here about our order of operations. So we're not trying to push places where we can't get behind stuff and apply the power that we need to apply to get the glue joint to fit tightly. So that'll be where we pick up next week. And this looks like the vent's going to tie right in real nice. Ooh, so I got to make a list. I got to have a couple more of these galvanized rubber dipped hold downs to support. Probably put one on one side and one on the other side of this vent at the very least. So 2 more of those. And can't think of, I have enough extra J-hooks. That's another thing. So once that's up there and perfectly lightning straight, we will use a laser to straighten it out, and we'll control it more often. We'll probably add a J-hook or 2. I mean, I have a whole pile here, and they weren't all that much. So, you know, I don't mind putting a J-hook on every single joist. And that's a case where I could have done every other one and then skipped one. But anyway, it's a bit redundant, or it's a bit frequent to have one on every single joist, but that may end up becoming the situation just to keep it nice and straight and looking good. So we'll leave that for next week to try and figure that out, and then we'll call this an end to the plumbing video, but not quite yet. Well, Tim's drilling at 36 inches off of the beam everywhere in about the center, just maybe a little lower because we got that PEX coming through as well. You should be in the center with these systems, but sometimes you got to either side of center with 2 PEX routes and dead center with a gas line or vice versa. Just, be aware that they can cross one another. We're going to spin the rest of the hard line out from the valve, and then we're going to turn up and away from us with this CSST, the corrugated stainless steel tubing. And just a 1/2 inch size. That's the nominal pipe size here. So we'll go up, forward, and we'll go right along through this series of holes. He's just doing that last one there that was a little closer together. I take the handle off. I think we're going to either go above or below this duct. I just as soon go up, and then maybe we'll pull like a 1-foot-long piece of the gas line tape, warning tape, and put it on the floor upstairs in case anybody goes working from above. Alternatively, you could swing it underneath, but then it's closer to the activity in the basement, and just never know. I don't need something to get nicked. It's definitely not as strong as black pipe. So we're going to bear left when we get over here. We're going to go right up into the bay behind the stove and right into that ox box, and then we'll be done with that. Then it's just a matter of treating the ends, which I'll come and show you in a separate segment. And we got the drain and vent glued over here. So now I'm going to start working at this end and try to glue the rest of this. And we're going to take the long piece down and make it 1-piece glue up. All right, viewers, we've come to the end of the plumbing video, even though we're not quite, we're not going to tie in here until we're ready to break down their existing kitchen. But we're ready. My components are glued and ready. I know what I want to do with all that stuff. And we also got, the gas line up and running. I called up and we'll look at the box upstairs. I got the little conduit nut in the right location so that the valve isn't wobbling around in the box anymore. We have started electrical, but that's next episode, so don't get ahead of ourselves. Tim's moving on his edge banding, all of his pre-finished plywood boxes and shelving. So the kitchen's coming along. All we got to do is finish up the systems in the wall and throw some drywall on it. And water for the fridge. We got some armor up for all those penetrations to the floor so we don't poke holes in those when we go to... We won't be trimming here, but maybe installing cabinets, just best practice. Stub outs are ready to be cut off. Pot filler's up. This is nice, and I do like this. That was a good call with that. And the power for the cab on the oven's here. So we got our all of our electrical boxes up, but we'll get into what my choices on those and all of that. So next week... Oh, and I did sneak out and finish up the soffit on the outside. So we're done out here. All new gutter, all new downspout. In fact, he just went with this one and elected not to tie this one in because that was the recommendation of the gutter guys. That's all set there, and I got a little bit of foam scuzz to scrub off, but I'll get to that eventually. All right, everybody. Again, next episode's all the electrical, but thanks for watching this one. We'll see ya.